Great. Well, good morning or good afternoon, students. I hope that you're all doing really, really well. We are so glad to be able to join you virtually here, although we wish we were in person with you. And we hope that you all had the opportunity to enjoy Polkadots the Cool Kids musical just before, and it was a nice sort of diversion in your school day. So as an introduction, my name is Owen Smith. I'm the producing artistic director of Park Playhouse, and I'm joined by my two colleagues, Ashley Kirchner and Angelique Powell, who both are on our full-time staff and who have both performed at Park Playhouse in Washington Park. And we're glad every year to get to bring school tours to schools just like yours all throughout the capital region. And this year it's had to be a little bit different because of COVID-19, but we've been able to at least reach schools virtually. And we're glad to introduce you to the theater so that you might learn something about the art form and maybe find a new hobby, something that you can get involved in that has a really positive impact on your life. But if for nothing else, it's just really fun to have different stories sort of come to life you on stage in front of you, but this time on screen in front of you. And this is an important story that is based on a period of history in our country that is really important. And so we hope that you got a chance to digest it and enjoy it, and hopefully you took something away from it. But I know that you guys were sent along a lot of really great questions. And Ashley, I think I'll let you sort of start leading, like going through the questions, but we're gonna try to get to every single one of your questions in the time we have. Thank you so much for sending them. It was really nice to read them.
All right. So my name's Ashley and I directed the show. And so I reached out to our cast, who unfortunately are not able to be with us right now because they're in school, just like you are, and had them answer these questions for you. So I'll start with the first one we received, and then we'll kind of work our way through. So the first question we got was, when did you start acting? And I'll go ahead and answer for Alexis Papaleo, who played
Lily? No.
Penelope Square, and for Jada Chance, who played Lily Polkadot, and then Angelique will read Ali Saboti's answers, who played Mrs. Square and Mama Square, and Owen will give Jason Serrano, who played Sky Square's answers. So Alexis started acting in 5th grade, and Jada started acting when she was 8 years old.
And Allie started acting in 3rd grade.
And that's the same for Jason. He started acting in 3rd grade. And for myself and for Angelique and for Ashley, it's all different. But the most important thing to know is that, you know, a lot of these folks that were in this show for us, they started really young. And some of you might have already started taking dance classes or might be doing theater program around your school or around your community. Some of you might play sports, and maybe you've been playing them from the time that you were really young. But the really important thing to know is that it's never too late. Like, just because these folks started in 3rd grade, if you're in 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, I didn't start actually until I was in 8th grade, and now it's what I do for a whole living. So it's never too late to start picking up a hobby and something that could even become your career.
Yeah, I was a dancer, and I didn't do my first musical until 10th grade in high school.
So yeah, I started in 8th grade as well, so totally.
Yeah.
All right, next question. Who is the person who supported you most in the theater? So I'll just answer on behalf of everybody for this one. Everybody said their family members. So either their older siblings or their mom or their entire family. And I think those are always the best people to kind of support us on our journeys, right? Is it hard to memorize your lines? What tricks do you use? So Alexis said repetition is the best trick for learning lines, and practicing with somebody else. We call that running lines. And Jada said that it's not hard for her to memorize her lines. She takes it one scene at a time and pretends someone else is saying the other lines with her.
So Allie says that her best advice for memorizing lines is to practice a lot and have her friends and family practice with her. I also find that if I record with the people that I actually do the scene with and play it back, then I memorize my lines really easily as well.
And Jason said a similar thing. He said it is a little tricky memorizing lines, and what I do is have another person help me by saying the other person's lines I'm in the scene with. So he might have someone at home that helps him. But the way that Angelique just said that, you know, I used to do that as well. And sometimes it's really good to fall asleep listening to the scenes that you've recorded. And that's a pretty good, actually, a pretty good tactic as you grow up in your school career when you need to study, especially if you have like a really, a big text that a big test coming up that you have a lot of information you have to retain. If you record yourself saying the things that you need to remember and then play that back for you as you fall asleep, somehow it just like embeds in your brain. And so a lot of actors do that. Luckily, all of our cast members were pretty young, so their memories are still really good. But we've had some older actors where it's a real struggle because their memory maybe isn't as good as it used to be. So you kind of have to know these techniques.
All right. When you were practicing for the play, what was your favorite part and what was the hardest part to learn? So Alexis said her favorite part was doing the squadot and the hardest part was memorizing her lines. And Jada said that her favorite part was Sticks and Stones, which is one of my favorite songs in the show. And the hardest part for her was pretending to fall in a dress.
So Allie said that her favorite part about Polkadots was doing the first, and the hardest part was learning the show so quickly.
Yeah, we only rehearsed for about a week and then filmed the show. So they rehearsed very quickly.
And so imagine that they actually had to come in knowing their lines. So they hadn't even had a chance to rehearse their lines before they were expected to be there and knowing them. Jason said that his favorite part was finally being back in a theater and obviously the squadot. And the hardest part was always trying to remember how to be safe during the pandemic. And this was filmed actually back in October. And so the pandemic is luckily starting to get better little by little. It's why we're wearing our masks. It's why we're keeping our social distance so that we can keep everyone safe and eventually get our life back to normal. But during October, it was especially tough because that's when the pandemic was really starting to increase for the fall season. And our entire cast had to get COVID tested before they could take their masks off. Until then, they had to rehearse with their masks on. And for those of you that might be playing sports with masks, or if you are doing theater activities, it can be really hard because you need that good breath to be able to sing, to be able to project your lines. And so it was different for these actors to have to learn how to do that and have to do it in such a short period of time. But it was also really cool to be able to be back in a theater because some of our cast members hadn't been in a theater for almost a year.
What is hard and easy about being an actor? Alexis said, sometimes it can be hard to not overthink when you're acting, but it's really important to remind yourself that it's a lot of fun and everybody that's on stage with you has your back. Jada said the easiest part about being an actress is getting on stage and performing, and because you've done all the work ahead of time. And so once you've done all your work, you can just get out there and enjoy yourself. She said the hard part is all the work. So learning the choreography and where to be on stage, which is like your blocking, which is like where to stand and all of that stuff.
So Allie says sometimes being an actor is hard because it's very competitive, which is true. A lot of times you're competing with other actors and other people who are similar types as you, and you're always hoping that you're the best fit, right? And she says, but what's easy about it is when you're in the show, it's very easy to make friends and have fun while being yourself. And I would add to that and say that for me, the hardest part is to not take myself too seriously. So similar to what Alexis said. And then I would say the easiest part though, is once you stop taking yourself too seriously, is having a lot of fun and just being.
And Jason said what's easy about being an actor is that it's something that he loves. So no matter the challenge, he always has a lot of fun overcoming those challenges. But he said what's hardest for him is learning the dances. And a lot of people might say that. For some people, it might be learning the dance. Like for me and Angelique, neither of us are really dancers, but Ashley grew up as a dancer. She's a wonderful dancer, so that comes really naturally to her. But maybe singing's not as comfortable to Ashley because I started singing when I was younger than she did. And Angelique is on stage a lot more than me and Ashley these days. So she has a comfortability as an actor that would be harder for us. So that's the tough thing about doing musicals is like you kind of have to be ready to do singing, dancing, and all the while you're acting, you're a character in a story. So there's a lot to keep track of in your mind when you're doing that. And if you haven't been doing it in a while, it's not like riding a bike. You have to like kind of get those muscles back engaged. Just like if you stopped playing a sport for a whole year and then went back to it, you wouldn't be quite as good as you were if you were keeping it up all throughout.
Yeah, I think it's so important to remember though, I think the coolest part about being an actor, which like we've all kind of touched on, is that everybody has different things that we bring to it, right? I might be a stronger dancer, but not a stronger singer. We all have these like unique attributes that make us as individuals important. And that's kind of the coolest thing about acting, I think, is that it's all about being the best version of yourself and bringing your unique talents to it, which is a really important thing for us all to remember in like everything that we do.
Absolutely. And there's no one right way to do anything. You can see the same character being played by 10 different people, and hopefully you'll see 10 different types of that character. And that's the really extraordinary about being an actor, is that you get, like Ashley said, you get to be like truly who you are and infuse the character with that.
Yeah. All right. Did you have to take singing lessons? The answer is a unanimous yes. And everybody talked about how important it is to take voice lessons if you sing a lot, because it teaches you how to keep your voice healthy. Just like any part of your body, right? Your voice could get injured. And so it's very, very important that when you take voice lessons, you're learning how to use that muscle correctly and aren't straining or doing anything that would hurt your voice. So yeah, voice lessons are super, super important. The next question, did you ever get stage fright? Alexa says she does sometimes, and it's totally normal, but it goes away once the show gets started. So usually like the first scene, she's a little nervous, but then she settles right in. And Jada said kind of similarly, she gets nervous before she goes on, but never on stage, just like right before.
Yeah, so Allie says that sometimes she gets stage fright, but then she just remembers that being on stage is what she loves to do and it makes her happy, so she's less scared. And I would say that in my experience, I get stage fright absolutely every single time that I have to go on stage. Every time. It doesn't matter how many times I have to perform that exact same show, I get stage fright every single time. But the second I walk on stage, I completely transform into the character that I'm supposed to be. And I forget that I'm afraid until I walk off stage again. And then I'm afraid all over again.
And Jason said that he really doesn't get stage fright, but he's mostly just excited to get on stage. And actually, I can relate to that because I can remember when I was in 8th grade and I was getting ready to go on stage in front of, my family and my fellow students, and the first time. And I can remember being backstage and thinking that I wanted to run out the door and just hide and not do it. And I'm so glad that I did, because after I got through doing it that first time, I've actually never had stage fright again. Every time I've performed, and I don't perform anymore now, I only direct and run a theater company, but every time I perform, if I have to get up and make a speech or anything, I'm not scared, because it's just something I got so used to. And by the way, that's a really good reason to take theater classes or to get involved with doing shows, because all throughout your life, it's going to be important to be able to be in front of people and be comfortable talking to people. That's just such a big part of being successful in the world. So, even if you've never taken a theater class before, even if you've never taken a voice lesson or anything like that, there's all sorts of ways throughout the capital region that you could get involved in the theater. And it's just such a beneficial experience to get you good at public speaking.
Totally. All right. What was your favorite role is our next one. So Alexis said her favorite role was playing Little Sally in a musical called You're in Town. Jada's favorite role was playing Rafiki in The Lion King.
And Allie's favorite role she's played has either been Lucy in You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, or Meg in Little Women, which is a show that is currently streaming. We just wrapped filming that show. And if you hop on our website, playhousestagecompany.org, then you will be able to find the information for the streaming. It'll be streaming from Thursday to Sunday of this week.
And Jason was also in that show, and he said that his favorite role was the role he just played in Little Women. So that's a fun show that you can watch at home. And I feel like for me, I always I've gotten to play a couple of roles twice in my life. And I always think it's fun when you've played something to then get to revisit it once you've gotten a little bit older and wiser. So that's what I've always enjoyed.
All right. And last but not least, who is your favorite actor? So I can just rattle these off for you. Alexa said Zendaya. Jada said Cynthia Erivo. Jason said Jason Bateman. And Allie said Jessie Mueller, who is a Broadway actress. And that's all we have for questions. I don't know if this would be too tough, but are there any that have come up now that since you've seen the show that maybe 3 of us could answer?
I see one hand I see a couple hands coming through there. I know your mics are muted, but maybe teachers, if you have anyone that you would like to call on by class, if you have time, we'd be happy to answer a few more. It's up to you guys. We'd be glad to spend a little more time with you.
Okay, I have one in here. Carly, go ahead. Will any of the characters what? Do what in real life? Oh, I don't know if you could hear what she said, but she said, would any of the characters ever be that mean in real life?
Oh, definitely not these guys. They're all very, very nice kids.
Yeah, these are really, really nice kids, but you know, it's an important lesson to know that there are times where there are people out there that will be that mean to someone just because of the way they look, or because of where they come from, or because of how much money they have. All these different reasons that someone might be mean to someone without really knowing who they are and without knowing their heart. And that's the message we hope that you take away from this show, is that it's really important to give people a chance and really be a good friend to someone, even if you don't know them yet, and really try to get to know people who are different than you. That's the most important thing. As you grow up, there's nothing better than getting to know people that look differently than you, that come from different places than you. There's no way to learn more about the world than to meet new people and to meet different people, and to not be afraid just because someone might be a little bit different. So our cast is really, really nice, luckily, but there are mean people out there, and we want to make sure that everybody that sees this show doesn't become one of them.
We've got a question in here. Patrick, who wrote the show?
Yeah.
So it was written by a man named, oh, go ahead, Ashley, please.
Oh, I was just gonna say, so a friend of our company, his name's Douglas Lyons. He is a Broadway actor, and he came up with the concept for the show and wrote all of the lyrics. And he and his two other writing partners have they've written a handful of other musicals that are like out in the world being performed different places, not Broadway yet, but fingers crossed. And he's actually a writer on the new Fraggle Rock now, so you can see an episode that he wrote if you watch any of that. But yeah, he's really great, and he did a couple workshops with our students. He's a really cool dude. He's like in his 20s and 30s, early 30s, and is an awesome actor and a really, really good writer, and this is like something he loves a lot.
And it's cool, like Ashley said, he had two collaborators with him, two people that he worked with. And even though this musical is only about an hour long, but writing a musical is so hard, because you have to think about the words that the characters say in the scenes, the words that they say during their songs, obviously we call those lyrics, and then the music itself. And those three things kind of have to mesh together in a way that makes sense. And that might seem simple when you're sitting and watching a show. We want it to seem simple, but it's really, really hard. It takes like so much collaboration and working together to come up with a final product for a musical. What else do we have? Teachers?
Lauren, go ahead.
How did they get the squares and spots on people's skin?
Could you hear that question?
Yeah, so that was all makeup. So the actress who played Penelope and I drew them on everybody is the easy answer. And then I designed all of their wigs, because that obviously wasn't their real hair. So they were all styled ahead of time, and then we put them on their head at the last minute.
And it was easier to do it in a movie and filming in a certain way, because when we did this show on the road a few years ago and we went from school to school, those actors had to put the dots and the squares on their skin every single day and then wash them off every single night. So when they were driving home, or if they were going to the store after or whatever, they would have dots and squares on their skin, and people would really wonder what was going on with them. And Ashley and Angelique both know it's like sometimes you play a role that has a lot of makeup and it takes a while to get it off after the show.
All right, Eleanor, you want to ask your question?
How do you change so quickly?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, the nice thing about doing it as a movie was we were able to stop, right? The camera could turn off, and then we would be able to edit out that space. But Angelique, do you want to talk about what it's like to do like a quick change and how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. So there, a lot of times that's choreographed in the way that like a scene change is choreographed. And sometimes if there are a lot of quick changes in a show, there is an entire person who is hired called a dresser who will help the actors backstage take, you know, really hard things like buttons and zippers and stuff off so that they can easily slip out of that costume and hop into the next costume that they have to be in. Sometimes the scene changes allow for enough time with set changes and things like that. So a lot of times there's choreographing with the director to decide if maybe, you know, there's going to be like a set change or something that will add for more time for the actors to be able to hop into their new costume. But a lot of times, I know for me personally, it's been like set staging my costume right next to where I ran off stage, you know, putting my pants and my shirt and whatever it is, like right there ready to go, and throwing off my clothes, leaving that for whoever, my stage manager backstage, and running into my costume and getting back on stage, probably with like half a second to spare. So it's kind of a stressful situation for sure.
So if you guys think back to the very beginning of Polkadots, both Penelope and Sky are wearing their pajamas and at the beginning of the song, and then by the end of the song they're in a totally different costume, right? They're in their like regular costume. So both of those actors use something we call underdressing, which means they have their whole entire other costume on underneath their pajamas. So if you guys go back when you watch the show again in the spring, watch for that. See if you can tell that they have a whole nother costume on underneath their pajamas. And then their pajamas are something that's called quick rigged, which is a sneaky theater thing that we take the buttons off of like the outside of a shirt and we sew them on the front and then put Velcro. So the shirts are actually Velcroed clothes. They're not like buttoned like normal shirts. So it's a little sneaky theater trick for you.
And that was a great question. I want to say whoever asked that question, it was a really smart question. And one of the things to think about, you know, is there are so many people that go into putting on a show that you don't necessarily see on stage. When you go see a play or a musical, you can't imagine sometimes how many people are backstage helping to make things happen. There's people that are running the lights, there's people that are running the sound, there's people that are handling the costumes or helping the dressing with the actors, there's people that are doing the props and things that actors have in their hands, and then there's people that are changing the sets. I mean, when we do our shows in the park during the summer, which are big free outdoor shows, sometimes there's like 14 or 15 people just backstage that you don't even see, and their work is super important too. And even if you're a little bit afraid to get on stage, if you have stage fright, that's okay. You can still totally get involved in the theater and work backstage. And that can be a really, really exciting hobby and even an exciting career path.
Okay, Braden, Kyle.
Do they have a lot of bloopers?
Did you hear what he said? Are there a lot of bloopers?
Oh gosh. You know, the funny thing is, again, this is like really different for us doing it as a film as opposed to a piece of live theater, because when you're doing a piece of live theater, there you have when bloopers happen, you can't stop, right? Because the audience is there watching live. So if someone forgets to come on stage, you have to kind of fill that space till they come on stage. Or if someone forgets a prop, you might have to improvise. Luckily, when we were doing Polkadots, we were filming it. So if someone kind of messed up, we could still go back and make sure it was perfect. But in the live theater, it can be really hard sometimes because you just have to go with it.
Yeah, totally. And like a big part of acting and of theater is connecting and building relationships. And so something that's huge that you would learn from being a part of the theater is actively listening to the people around you. And that way, when that, I say when, not if, when, because it absolutely will happen and no show is ever the same. So when that happens, you're ready because you're actively listening to your scene partners and to what's happening to jump right in and move the show forward to where it needs to be.
All right, I see another hand in the Crit's classroom, it looks like.
Hi, Chloe.
How long have the actors been acting with you guys?
With us, since they started. Jason, who played Sky, he's only been with us for about 2 years now, but all three, Jada, Alexis, and Allie, have all been students with us since they started.
Yep. and it's so much fun for us to get to watch them grow. You know, Jada it was about 4 years ago that she played, Ashley mentioned before that she played Rafiki in The Lion King, and she was truly amazing. It was amazing to think that a little girl could do what she did. She sounded so good and she was so poised and so energetic. But then even just a few years later, she was already so much better because she's been working on it. So when she did this show, it's like she's a professional now. And we could say the same thing about Alexis and Allie. The people are dedicated to it and they just get better and better.
And I think all of them are going to be going to college for musical theater too. So they're going to continue their training. Alexis is the only senior, but she's going to NYU in the fall for musical theater. So they're all going to keep working in this field and do it professionally.
I've got one more in here. Evan, go ahead.
How do they keep the hair on?
Oh, wow. I'll let Ashley and Angelique answer that because I don't have much hair, so I don't get to wear wigs very often. But Ashley designed the wig, so I'll throw it to her.
Yeah. How do they keep them on? A whole lot of bobby pins is the quick answer. We do pin curls underneath or braids, and then a wig cap, and then you pin them in a really specific way to kind of make sure that when you move your head around, right, the whole wig isn't like moving.
I think Ashley's feed might have gone away, but I'll tell you what, it really can be tough because you have these wigs on and these costumes and you still need to focus. Like Angelique was talking about, you need to be able to speak to the other people you're on stage with and connect with them and listen to them while all the while you're worried about having like a pound of hair on your head. And I'll tell you what, one time I was in a touring production and we performed almost 500 times the same play. We had to do it 500 times over the course of a couple of years. And what was tough was I had to wear 4 different kinds of facial hair all throughout the show. And so that means I had to keep changing them each time that I had to be a different character. And that's like a really hard part about acting. Now, Ashley's back, even though she lost her feed, she and Angelique are sharing a space. So of course they put their masks on, but that's a great question about the wigs. Who's next?
Totally.
Savannah, did you want to ask your question? Go ahead.
Oh, great question. Great question. So the little girl at the end who played the triangle, right? Who's someone who's different again. She was a little girl. She was, even though we didn't have an audience there for the show because of COVID, because we were trying to be safe, the musical director, the gentleman who taught all of the music and helped to, work with the cast, his daughter came in and her name is Isis Axford, and she came in and got to play the triangle and come up on stage with them. So if we were doing the show live at your school, the actors would have just picked someone from the audience and put the hat on and made them the triangle. But in this case, we had someone who was ready to go, Isis, who is also a student in our youngest kids program. We have a program called Playhouse Tykes, and she was in a production of Winnie the Pooh for us. So it was cool. She got to do it in this production.
All right, and we have one more question over here. Cohen wants to know how long it took to film.
Well,
One really long day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a really long day, and by the end of the day we were exhausted and we had to kind of rush because this was totally new to us. We're theater artists more so than film artists, so we had to kind of learn as we went too. And we had a really, really wonderful partner, a company called Youth FX, and they work with students to learn how to do filming and editing. And so it was cool because we had our students performing and they had their students doing the filming, but by the end of the day we were exhausted. It took like 8 hours to film the whole thing.
I think we just have one more in here. I'm going to let James go, Carly, because you got a question. Go ahead, James.
With the person that played the Mama Square, is he any older than the
I think it was the same person. So he said, what were the age of them? And was the one who played the Mama Square older?
No, she's actually one of the younger ones. So Alexis, who played Penelope, is just turned 18. Jason, who played Sky, is 17, I think. Allie played both Mama and Mrs. Square. So it's the same actress playing both of those parts. And she's 16. And Jada, who played Lily, is 15.
All right, I think I saw one hand in Luke's class, perhaps.
All right, yeah. Brody, finish this off with the last question.
Okay, so did they feel uncomfortable wearing the costume?
Were the costumes comfortable?
No, were they uncomfortable?
Were the costumes uncomfortable?
No,
Tell you what, sometimes costumes can be really, really uncomfortable, especially when Ashley was talking about the concept of underdressing, where you wear one costume under another so you can move very quickly. Sometimes that's really tough for your movement. It makes it really hot, and actors have to deal with a lot of things in the live theater like that, but we try to make them as comfortable as possible. Ash and Angelique, anything on uncomfortable costumes?
Yeah, totally. I mean, you know, our home is the Washington Park Lake House, so that's outdoor theater in the middle of the summer. And when I was in ragtime, there was one bit where I had to be an Eskimo during the middle of this, in a period piece where we were already wearing clothes from, you know, the turn of the century. And I had to tuck up all of the petticoats and undergarments and put on a fur vest and fur pieces to pretend I was an Eskimo in like probably the hottest summer we've had in Albany.
These ones were all really comfortable though.
Yeah.
Because they're all just like clothes.
Indoors, we can turn the air conditioning on. We can't do that when we're outdoors, but
Yeah. And sometimes, you know, sometimes that costume might be too tight. It might be too big. And, you know, like Owen was talking about with wigs and stuff, a lot of that can distract you from your purpose of being on stage. So it's hard as an actor to not get caught up in what you're wearing, or, you know, if you want to make sure your wig's not sliding anywhere, like you want to make sure you're as secure and as comfortable as possible, so you're not thinking about any of those outside factors.
Yeah, so they're like adding to you creating the character as opposed to like in the back of your mind, like taking away from them.
Yeah.
well, these were all really great questions. I think I might see one more hand in Mr. Disso's room there. We have time for one more.
Alex will be our last one. Go ahead, Alex. Nice and loud.
how did you get the idea of Polkadots and squares?
Well,
You heard it?
yeah, I heard it. So Mr. Lyons, Douglas Lyons, who wrote the show, it was really an original idea to do the show, but it was based on the history of Ruby Bridges and the Little Rock Nine. This was based on a time in our country's history where our schools weren't integrated, where people of different races weren't necessarily allowed to go to the same school until finally our government realized how wrong that was, and they changed the laws. And so all of a sudden, students who had never gone to school together and maybe had never gone to school with someone who didn't look like them, they were then going to school together. So even though it's an original idea to have polka dots and squares, it's based on real history, real things that have happened to real people in our country.
Yeah. And just like you guys asked before, you know, are there people that are that mean? There were people who were that mean to Ruby Bridges when she went to school, and to the Little Rock Nine, and they suffered through being bullied, and people were really hostile about them going to their school to receive an education. And they persevered so that like people like me are able to go to school with people like Ash, and it's wonderful.
It's, again, that's the most important thing for us that you take away from the show, is that we should celebrate our differences, that everybody's different in one way or another. And we want to make sure that if you ever see someone bullying someone because of their race or because of where they come from, or really about anything, tell one of your teachers, tell one of your principals, tell your parents. It's not okay for people to put other people down. We all want to help lift each other up. That's the most important thing to take away here.
Yeah, be an upstander like Sky.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank each and every one of you students. Those questions were all really, really smart questions. And we're so glad when we get to actually talk to the students that see our work. And so to get to talk to you virtually was really a privilege. And I also want to thank Mr. Disso and all of the teachers and administrators who helped to bring our production to your school virtually. And our fingers are crossed that next year we'll be back out on the road with our school tours, and we'll actually be able to be there in the school with you performing live in person.